Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Full Court Press. I am your host, Drew Duncan. Do not forget that Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan83. Additionally, you can find me on YouTube. Simply look for Drew Duncan. Of course, the Full Court Press is on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. And you can find our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts via iHeartRadio, Deezer, Google Podcasts, etc. 32 teams, 32 days in the NFL. The topic of discussion today is the New Orleans Saints, who many believe, well, let's just call an ace and a spade, were screwed out of an opportunity to go to the Super Bowl after that horrendous non-call for the pass interference last year in the NFC Championship game. One of the things that I talked about initially, look, I'm going to get this out of the way right now. It was a bad call, horrible missed call. But one of the things that I've talked about over and over again ad nauseum almost is that you should never give the referees an opportunity to dictate the outcome of a football game. The same way that an MMA fighter or a boxer or anybody involved in combat sports will tell you, hey, you know what? I felt like I won that fight, but I should never give the judges an opportunity to leave the victor in their hands, in their eyes, the way that they view how the fight came out. Now, of course, as a result, we've got opportunities, and we've already seen it kind of through the preseason and a couple of games already where you have a chance to, except for in the last 2 minutes, challenge pass interference. Calls, non-calls, and of course, in the last 2 minutes, a booth review can happen, and we've already seen that happen in the preseason. But for me, the main thing about that football game was to me, the New Orleans Saints were the better overall football team. I don't know that they had a better defense, but I know that they definitely had a better offense in my eyes than LA. I thought they were a far more balanced offense, I should say, than the LA Rams. And I also felt that you have a better quarterback in Drew Brees, especially one who's as seasoned as he is, has already been in these situations. Plus, you are in New Orleans. That crowd was 100% ruckus. There were moments in that game, lest we forget, where players from the Rams were not able to communicate using vocal calls in the huddle in order to get plays to happen. Plus, they had a lead, guys. A good lead as well. The New Orleans Saints beat themselves in that football game for the most part. It was a bad call at the end of that game, but they did ultimately beat themselves. Then, of course, we go into the draft and we look at offseason moves. Obviously, the big hit for the New Orleans Saints was re-signing Michael Thomas, giving him an extension, highest paid wide receiver in the NFL as of now. I'm not going to take anything away from Michael Thomas. He's a very good wide receiver. But I've always said that players get paid predicated upon what they mean to that franchise. Jersey sales, who they're coming to see, what they mean to the team on the field and off the field is equally important in most instances in the eyes of an owner, a GM, a CEO, whomever, a head coach, etc. And when I look at Michael Thomas, I start doing contrast and comparison. I think to myself, who would you rather take, Michael Thomas or Antonio Brown? Forget all the off-the-field stuff with, having the wrong foot gear allegedly and doing what he was doing. What was it in Europe, if I remember correctly? And, of course, his feet are bad now. And then, of course, there's the whole helmet thing, and he may retire and all this kind of. Forget about all that stuff, right? Think about just being on the field. Who would you take, Antonio Brown or Michael Thomas? Would you take Julio Jones or Michael Thomas? Would you take a healthy A.J. Green or Michael Thomas? If we put any of these people together on the same team, to you, who would be the premier wideout? I mean, what about DeAndre Hopkins? Who would you take, Michael Thomas or DeAndre Hopkins? Who would be your guy, Emmanuel Sanders, right? You start going down the list, and it kind of makes you go, Now, here's the antithesis. What he means to the New Orleans Saints is going to really be even bigger this year, is it not? Because now you don't have Mark Ingram. So you've lost that 1-2 punch in the backfield that you've had with Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram, which I think is going to be huge for this football team. Because that run game and the idea that you can kind of run split backs and take the load off and run some different unique types of plays because of, you never know. Okay, they got Kamara in, they got Mark Ingram in. They may or may not run the football. They may or may not run screen passes. And so that takes pressure off of your wide receivers and your quarterback and your offensive line, because the defense is now trying to account for what's going on in the backfield. Now, instead of having 3 people to account for, Drew Brees, Mark Ingram, and Alvin Kamara, now you have 2 people predominantly in that backfield who you're going to account for, which is going to put more pressure on everybody, including your wide receivers, to try and get open, because the defensive looks are going to change now. They're going to key in on your receivers a little bit more. So the concern that I have is, how will Michael Thomas produce having that added pressure? I know what we're going to get out of Drew Brees. One of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, one of the most underappreciated quarterbacks of all time, one of the most under-talked about quarterbacks of all time. Look, I give nothing but respect to Tom Brady, but I am so damn tired of hearing about Tom Brady and the New England Patriots, about Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers, who I have a lot of respect for. But Drew Brees stays healthy. Drew Brees is performing at a high level at damn near 40. Drew Brees is going to NFC Championship games. Drew Brees has done a lot more with a lot less. And then, of course, there's the character of Drew Brees that I think everybody appreciates and respects. Then, of course, you start looking at this football team defensively, right? They're already going to be without defensive end, or is it Carl Granderson, right? They're going to be without him. Off the field issues, he's not expected to play the 2019 season. He's officially been listed on the IR. I do like Eli Apple at linebacker. I love the linebacking crew with this football team. I think they're going to be solid. But up front, when you're trying to control the line of scrimmage, and I start thinking about football teams like the Rams and some of the other teams that are out there in the NFL, how will they stack up when it comes to being on the line of scrimmage? The defensive backs for this unit have taken plenty of criticism over the last couple of seasons. How will the passing game look defensively for the New Orleans Saints? Look, the bottom line scenario is this. They are favored to win their division, right? I've already said with the Carolina Panthers, you never know what you're going to get. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, really from top to bottom, with maybe the exception of the Saints, you're looking at a bunch of teams and players that are all hit and miss. I've already discussed that about Jameis Winston and Cam Newton. I've already talked about that with Matt Ryan. Yeah, Matt Ryan may put up his numbers, but how are the Atlanta Falcons going to do as a whole? And they've got some notable games coming up, right? They're going to have that rematch with L.A. In week 2 of the season. They're going to open up against the Texans. And they're going to be on the road, by the way, for that Rams game. They're going to face the Seahawks in Seattle. They're going to face the Cowboys. Jacksonville, what are they going to look like now with Nick Foles? Defensively, I think we're going to get a look at them very early on, because they do face the Cardinals and their new hotshot quarterback. They do face the Jaguars. They do face the Buccaneers, the Cowboys, who may or may not be without Zeke Elliott at this point. So the Saints, I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do early on, because they're going to get tested very early with this schedule. Then they're going to be at Chicago. It is not going to be an easy look for the New Orleans Saints this season. If they win 11 or 12 games, I'm going to call that a win for them, especially given the fact that they just don't have the backfield that they did last year, and a defense that may not add up. Guys, I am Drew Duncan, host of the Full Court Press. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan 83. Find me on YouTube, Drew Duncan. The Full Court Press is on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. And as always, don't you dare touch that dial.